The bus died on a road too narrow to turn around. 29-year-olds, one plume of white vapor, and no one coming. Listen, K-Fam. Camille Devereaux is a black teacher, 27, fighting her own district to give gifted kids with no money a free program. She spends her own paycheck on supplies. That day, the field trip bus quit on a strip of asphalt with nowhere to go. Behind it, an armored convoy stops. Out steps Cha Ji-hwan, 40, charcoal three-piece suit, platinum watch, a black koi tattoo climbing the left side of his neck. They call him the Quiet One. He came down to move an obstacle. Instead, he watches her. She's turning a breakdown into a science mission, calming every child by name, threatening no one. IU, the man who owns rooms, just went still. He sends his driver to the engine. He reschedules a meeting by phone. And Camille catches the first thread. How does a stranger fix a dead bus that fast? I know people, he says. Omo, K-Fam. That answer opens more doors than it closes. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Camille Devereaux counted the crumpled bills on the classroom desk for the third time, and the number still came up wrong. $41. She needed 60. The box of magnifying glasses sat by the door, taped and ready to be returned. 24 little lenses she'd promised 24 9-year-olds they'd hold in their own hands on the field trip tomorrow. She pressed her thumb against the receipt until the ink smudged. Then she opened her own wallet and took out the difference. She didn't hesitate. That was the thing about Camille. The hesitation happened later, at midnight, when the ceiling fan spun and the checking account glowed on her phone in the dark. In the room, in front of the kids, in front of the work, her hands moved like they already knew the answer. She slid the extra $19 under the paperclip with the rest and carried the box to the supply shelf. The wine-colored knit clung to her shoulders as she stretched to reach the top shelf. Gray pencil skirt, tan heels she'd resoled twice, gold hoops catching the fluorescent light, the little cross at her collarbone swinging forward as she leaned. Everything about her said a woman who had somewhere important to be. The bank balance said otherwise. Both were true at once, and she'd stopped letting the second one win. The intercom crackled. Ms. Devereaux to the front office. Ms. Devereaux. She knew that tone. She'd been hearing that tone for 6 weeks. Principal Deborah Ellison was waiting with the folder already open on her desk, reading glasses low on her nose, the beaded chain resting against a plum blazer. She didn't look up right away. When a woman like Deborah didn't look up, it meant she was choosing her words, and choosing your words meant the words were bad. They said no, Camille said. Not a question. They said no. Deborah took the glasses off. Third time, same language as the second time. The district cannot allocate discretionary funds to a program that duplicates existing services. There are no existing services. That's the whole. Camille stopped herself. She'd said it before. Saying it again wouldn't turn a no into a yes. It would just wear a groove in her own chest. She pulled the chair out and sat. Which kids did we lose this round? Deborah slid the list across. 11 names. Camille read every one. She taught 6 of them. She knew which house on Ferron Street had no heat last winter. Knew which girl brought the same granola bar in her backpack every single day because it was breakfast and lunch. Knew which boy could do long division in his head faster than the app on her phone, but wrote his letters backward because nobody had ever sat with him long enough to notice why. The enrichment program was free. That was the point. 2 afternoons a week. The gifted kids whose parents couldn't buy them a single enrichment class, a single tutor, a single summer camp. Kids exactly like the one Camille used to be. back when smart and poor were two facts that canceled each other out in every room she walked into. She had built the whole thing on paper: curriculum, safety plan, volunteer roster, a budget so lean it squeaked, $60 a month for materials, 60, and 3 times now, a board she had never met had decided those 11 children weren't worth $60. She knew the shape of that math from the inside. When Camille was 9, the exact age of the kids on the roster, the exact age of the granola bar girl, a teacher named Mrs. Okafor had pulled her aside after a science test and said, quiet, so nobody else would hear it, that there was a Saturday program at the community college for kids like her, kids who tested high. And Camille had gone home glowing and asked, and the answer had been $40 a session, and her mother had gone very still at the sink and said, we'll see, and we'll see, had been the kindest no in the world. And Camille had never brought it up again, because she'd already understood that bringing it up again would only hurt the person who couldn't fix it. 18 years later, she was still that girl at the kitchen sink. She'd just decided to stand on the other side of the counter this time. You okay? Deborah asked, watching her. I'm fine. Camille blinked the memory down. I'm annoyed. That's different from not fine. There's a treasurer, Deborah said carefully. Pearsall. He's the one who keeps flagging the line item. I've dealt with him before. He calls everything a slippery slope. A slippery slope to what? Kids learning? To spending, Camille. To a precedent. Men like Pearsall don't see children. They see line items and re-election. Deborah leaned back, and for a second the tired in her eyes went all the way down. I've watched this district squeeze this building for 15 years. Every time the neighborhood gets $1 prettier, somebody upstairs starts doing math about the land under our feet. You fight the small fights, because the small fights are the ones you can win, sometimes. Camille folded the list and put it in her skirt pocket. Not the trash, the pocket. The field trip's still on tomorrow, she said. The field trip's still on. Deborah almost smiled. The County Science Center confirmed. Bus is booked. Mr. Alvarez is driving. Then I've got 24 kids who get one good day, whether the board likes it or not. Camille stood. The cross swung and settled. I'll take the win I can win. She didn't slam the door. She never slammed doors. She closed it soft, and somehow that was louder. That night she sat on her kitchen floor, with the field trip binder open across her knees, because the table was covered in laminated planet cards she'd cut out by hand. She wrote each child's name on a lanyard. She checked the emergency contact numbers against the office printout, twice, because one of them, the granola bar girl, had a mother who changed phones every few months when the money ran out. She packed a gallon bag of pretzels she bought with her own coupons. She charged the disposable camera the school didn't know she'd bought. Somewhere past 11, she let herself feel the $41 for exactly 1 minute. Then she zipped the bag and went to bed. Morning came gray and cold and smelling of diesel. The kids came in loud. They always came in loud, and Camille had learned years ago that loud wasn't a problem to solve. Loud was fuel, and you either burned it or it burned you. She stood at the curb in her wine top and gray skirt with a clipboard and called the roll like a general. Destiny. Here, Marcus P. Here, Aaliyah, sweetheart. Backpack on both shoulders. We talked about this. Thank you, Deshawn. Here, inside voice. We're outside. Save it. Priya. 24 hairs. 24 lanyards. Grace Whitfield jogged up at the last second, auburn curls escaping the clip, olive cardigan half-buttoned, tote bag slapping her hip, 2 travel coffees balanced in a way physics did not endorse. I am chaperoning, and I have caffeine, and I have decided today is going to be good, Grace announced, handing over the second cup. History teacher on a science trip. I'm basically comic relief. You're free labor, Camille said, taking the coffee. Best kind. Same thing. Grace sipped, then narrowed her eyes at the disposable camera clipped to Camille's bag. Is that the camera the school said we couldn't expense? The $40 one? It was $19, on sale, and, no. Camille clipped it tighter. You saw nothing. I see everything. Grace grinned. That's my actual job, history teacher. I connect the dots nobody bothers to check. Then she looked at the bus, then at Camille, then lowered her voice. Ellison told me about the board. Third no. A wince. Camille, that's... Not today, Camille said it gently. Today's a good day. You decided. Grace exhaled. Today's a good day. They loaded the bus. Alvarez, the driver, was a wide, calm man with a thermos and a habit of humming, and he pulled the yellow doors shut with a hiss and a clank that 24 children cheered like a rocket launch. Camille took the seat behind him, clipboard on her knee, and counted heads down the aisle one more time, because you always counted twice, and the number came out right, and the bus pulled away from the curb into the gray. The County Science Center was 40 minutes out, past the last strip malls, onto the two-lane county road that curled between bare October fields and a low ridge of trees. Camille had driven it 100 times. Narrow road, no shoulder to speak of. A ditch on the right, where the land dropped toward a drainage line. A rock face on the left, where the county had blasted through the ridge decades ago. Beautiful, in a stark way. Not a road you wanted trouble on. The kids sang the whole first half. Grace led a round of something about a green frog that had no discernible ending, and Camille let it run, watching the trees blur, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm, feeling, for a stretch of maybe 20 minutes, almost okay. The list was still in her pocket. The $41 was still gone, but the sun was trying to come through, and Aaliyah was laughing so hard she had the hiccups, and some fights you win by simply putting good hours in front of children who deserved them. Then the bus coughed. It was a small sound, a hitch under the humming, a stutter in the diesel rhythm that Camille felt in her spine before she understood it in her ears. Alvarez stopped humming. His shoulders went straight. His eyes flicked to a gauge Camille couldn't see, and his hand moved to the shifter, and none of that was good, because a driver who stops humming is a driver who is listening for something to get worse. It got worse. The engine bucked. The whole bus lurched, a hard jolt that threw the kids forward against their seatbacks and yanked the singing into a ragged scream. A grinding groan rose from somewhere under the floor, metal complaining in a register that meant real, and then a hiss, a long, rising hydra hiss, and white vapor bloomed up over the front windshield, thick as a curtain, swallowing the road ahead in one breath. Okay, Alvarez said, wrestling the wheel. Okay, hold on. He couldn't pull over. There was nowhere to pull over. He fought the dying bus to the right as far as the ditch allowed, which was barely a foot, and let it roll to a shuddering, wheezing, final stop dead, across the middle of the narrow road. The engine gave one last cough and quit. The hiss kept going. Steam poured up and out, catching the cold air, curling white against the trees. For 1 second, the bus was silent. Then 24 9-year-olds understood that something was very wrong, all at the same time, and the silence broke into pieces. The screaming started at the back and rolled forward like a wave. Somebody was crying before they even knew why. Deshaun was up out of his seat, and once one kid stands up on a bus, they all want to stand up. And Camille watched the panic try to become a stampede in the space of a single heartbeat. A little boy pressed both hands to the window and wailed. Aaliyah's hiccup laughs turned into hiccup sobs. Grace was on her feet with her arms out, saying, it's okay, and it wasn't working, because it's okay, from a scared adult, only tells children the adult is scared too. Camille stood. She didn't say it's okay. She clapped once, a single hard crack that cut through the noise like a snapped ruler, and when 24 heads swung toward the sound, she was already smiling, wide, delighted, like the best thing that could possibly happen had just happened. Oh, no way! Her voice went up bright and fast, a live wire. No way! Did you all feel that? Did you feel that? She grabbed the seat back and leaned into the aisle, eyes huge. Scientists! Scientists! That, right there, was a real live thermodynamics event, and we got front row seats. Do you know how rare that is? A hiccup of confusion rippled through the crying. A few of the sobs stalled, mid-breath, kids too startled by her joy to keep up their terror. Steam, Camille said, pointing at the white curtain pouring past the windows, making it a wonder instead of a threat. That white cloud? That is water so hot it turned into a gas right in front of your eyeballs. The engine got too hot, the water inside boiled, and boom, state change. Solid, liquid, gas. We literally just did the unit. Priya, baby, look at me. What state of matter is steam? Priya, tears still on her cheeks, whispered, gas. Gas? Camille said it like Priya had just cured a disease. Give her a hand. Give her a hand right now. And the kids, half of them still shaking, clapped, because a teacher told them to clap, and clapping was easier than screaming. She was moving now, down the aisle, and here was the thing Grace would tell people about for years afterward. Camille touched every single child. Not a big dramatic sweep. A hand on this shoulder, a knuckle tap on that head, crouching to eye level with the ones whose faces were still coming apart. And she used their names. Every name. She never stopped using their names. Marcus, you're my door captain. Stand by me. Destiny, count our friends for me. Out loud, nice and slow. Deshaun, buddy, I need those big lungs. You're on job 1. We stay in our seats, because a good scientist never contaminates the experiment by running around. Right? Right. Aaliyah. She dropped into a crouch beside the granola bar girl, whose whole body was trembling. Camille took both small hands in hers. Hey, look at my face. Am I scared? Aaliyah looked. Camille held the smile steady, until the girl found something in it to hold on to. No, Aaliyah breathed. No, because I know exactly what's happening and exactly what we do next. And when I know what's next, you don't have to be scared, because that's my whole job. Deal? A tiny nod. Deal. Now you're my temperature scientist. Every 2 minutes you tell me if the air smells hot or cold. Can you do that? Another nod, bigger. The trembling in the small hands started, slowly, to still. Up front, Alvarez had the door open and one boot on the step, radio in his hand. Dispatch isn't picking up, he said low, so the kids wouldn't hear. Dead zone out here. I got maybe 1 bar. His jaw was tight. And Ms. Devereaux, we're all the way across the road. Blind curve behind us. Anything comes around that bend doing 50, they won't see us till. I know. Camille kept her voice sunny for the kids, and her eyes flat serious for him. Get your triangles out, walk them back up the curve, far as the reflectors reach. Grace goes with you. She was already peeling off her own bright wine tops problem. No, keeping it. The color was good. The color was visible. Grace, take your cardigan off and wave it if you have to. We need to be seen. Grace was moving before Camille finished. On it. Everyone else. Camille clapped again, once, and pivoted back to the bus like a game show host. New assignments. We are conducting field research. I need observers on the left windows and observers on the right windows, and I need to know what you see, not what you're scared of, what you see. Go. And they went. That was the miracle of it. A busload of terrified children, stranded sideways across a blind country road, with steam still hissing off a dead engine and one bar of signal between them and help. And Camille Devereaux had taken all that fear and pointed it at something to do, so that instead of 24 kids screaming, they had 24 kids pressing their noses to the glass reporting the color of the trees, the number of crows on the fence, whether the smell was hot or cold. She moved seat to seat. She kept the names coming. She kept the smile up, like a woman holding a roof on her shoulders and whistling while she did it. Deshawn, who 20 seconds ago had been halfway to a full meltdown, was now standing very straight in the aisle, with his arms crossed, appointing himself sheriff of the sit-down rule, barking "Seats, we stay in our seats," at anyone who wobbled. Marcus P. had his hand flat on the door like it was a nuclear launch key only he was cleared to touch. Destiny had counted the class 4 times and announced 24 with the gravity of a census official. Priya had stopped crying entirely and was now arguing with the boy across the aisle about whether the cloud was technically steam or technically fog, which was, Camille noted with a flicker of real pride, exactly the right argument to be having. Fear turned sideways, became curiosity. Curiosity was a thing a child could survive. Ms. Devereaux. A small hand tugged. If the engine's a volcano, does that mean lava? No lava, Camille said, ruffling his hair. Better than lava. Chemistry. Write it down, you're my note-taker. He beamed, like she'd handed him a badge. She did not let a single one of them see the calculation running behind her eyes. No signal, no shoulder, a blind curve, 24 children she loved, and $41 in the world. She caught her own reflection in the door glass for half a second, the bright wine top, the gold at her ears, the cross, the smile she was wearing like armor. A woman who looked like she owned the road. Inside, she was doing arithmetic she'd been doing her whole life. How much fear can I absorb before it shows? And how do I make sure it never reaches the small ones? She'd carried heavier than this on less. She widened the smile a notch and kept moving. She looked out the rear window, past Grace waving her cardigan, past Alvarez setting the last reflective triangle at the top of the curve. The steam was thinning. The road behind them curved out of sight into the trees, empty, gray, quiet. Then it wasn't empty. Something came around the bend, low, black, moving fast, then not, braking hard, the way heavy things brake, nose dipping. Not one vehicle, 3, a black SUV, then a long black sedan with windows too dark to be a family car, then another SUV, nose to tail. A convoy, the kind of convoy that did not belong on a 2-lane county road between October fields. They stopped in a tight line 30 feet back, exactly where a dead yellow school bus had turned the whole road into a wall. For a moment, nothing moved. The steam curled. The crows lifted off the fence. Then the rear door of the black sedan opened. Camille felt Aaliyah tug her sleeve. Ms. Devereaux, the little voice said, the air smells cold now. Good girl, Camille murmured, eyes fixed on the man unfolding from the black car into the gray morning light. That's real good. The man came out of the black car, the way water comes off glass. No hurry, nothing wasted. 1 foot on the asphalt, then the whole of him unfolding into the gray light, straightening to his full height beside the sedan. Behind him, the 2 SUVs sat with their engines running, low and patient, and nobody else got out. Just him. Camille watched from the cracked window of the dead bus. 30 feet of empty road between them. He buttoned nothing, adjusted nothing. He simply stood, and the standing itself was a kind of announcement. Priya tugged her sleeve. Miss Devereaux, is that a limo? Eyes on your thermometer, baby. But her own eyes did not leave him. He turned his head and took the scene in one slow sweep. The bus slanted across both lanes, the last threads of steam curling off the hood, Grace on the shoulder still fanning her cardigan at the blind curve, Alvarez crouched over a reflective triangle, a man measuring a problem. Camille had seen that look on district officials, on bank tellers, on landlords. The look of someone deciding how much you were going to cost him. Then the door of the SUV behind him opened, and a second man dropped out. Squat, shaved head, a bomber jacket zipped to the throat. He came around fast and low and said something in Korean, quick and clipped, gesturing at the bus. The tall one lifted 2 fingers off his own thigh. Just that. The squat man stopped talking. Camille understood the grammar of it without a single word. Whoever these people were, the tall one was the sentence, and everybody else was punctuation. She pushed open the folding door and stepped down onto the road. "Miss D," Alvarez started. "Stay with the kids." She said it low, kept walking, hands loose at her sides, chin level. 24 9-year-olds behind her, a blind curve behind them, and a convoy of black metal in front. Somebody had to be the adult standing in the open. It was going to be her, because it was always going to be her. The tall man's gaze found her the instant she cleared the door, and it changed. She caught it happening. She'd spent her whole life reading faces for the moment they decided what she was. A threat, a burden, an inconvenience, a woman to be handled. His face did none of those things. His face went still in a different way, like a man who had walked into a room expecting furniture and found a window instead. "Sir," she said, stopping 10 feet off, "I've got a full bus of children and 1 dead engine. If your people can help me clear this curve before something comes around it, I would be grateful. If they can't, I need you to back your vehicles up so nobody dies today." For a moment he said nothing. The wind moved the loose curls across her forehead, and she let them fall. "You are the teacher," he said, accent low, careful, each consonant set down like it cost something. "I'm the teacher." His eyes went past her shoulder, to the bus, to the pale faces stacked in the windows watching. A small hand pressed flat against the glass, Marcus P., who pressed his hand against every window in the world. The man looked at that hand a second longer than he needed to. "How many?" he said. 24, and 2 adults, and the driver. "On this road," not a question, a weighing. "On this road," she said. "The county cut the field trip fund 3 years ago. This route's 40 minutes to the science center, and it's the only one that doesn't have a toll. So yes, this road." Something crossed the back of his eyes that she couldn't name and didn't trust. She'd learned young not to trust the softening in a powerful man's face. The softening was usually the part right before the bill. He turned his head a few degrees. "Do-yoon." The squat one snapped upright. The tall man spoke 3 sentences in Korean, unhurried. Camille caught the shape of a command inside them, though she caught no meaning. Do-yoon looked at the bus, looked at her, and for half a second his flat face did something that on another man might have been a smile. Then he pulled a phone from his jacket, said 1 word into it, and both SUV doors opened at once. 4 more men, tool bags, an actual tool bag, canvas and scarred, the kind mechanics keep for 20 years. Camille blinked. "You travel with a mechanic." "I travel with useful people," the tall man said. Do-yoon was already at the hood, popping the latch Alvarez had given up on, waving one of the others in beside him. Somebody killed the idling engines of the SUVs so they could hear the bus tick and cool. Within seconds, there was a small, competent hive around the front of the vehicle, and none of it touched the children, and none of it came within 10 feet of the door. That last part she noticed. That last part she filed away. The tall man had not moved. He stood exactly where he'd been, watching her instead of the repair, and it should have unsettled her more than it did. "You did not scream," he said. "Excuse me?" "The engine, the steam, the road." He tipped his chin an inch toward the bus. 24 children. You did not scream. Screaming's a luxury. She folded her arms. I've got a bus full of kids who've been told their whole lives that things break and nobody comes. I'm not going to be one more grown-up who falls apart in front of them. He was quiet. Down the road, Grace kept fanning the cardigan, watching the exchange sideways with the wide, unblinking stare of a woman memorizing a face. So, I turned it into a lesson, Camille said, because he was still looking, and the silence needed filling. Solid, liquid, gas. Phase change. The water in the engine turned to steam. Steam takes up more room. The pressure had to go somewhere. Now it's the most exciting thing that's happened to them all year. She shrugged. Fear and wonder are the same chemical. You just have to point them at something. For the first time, the stillness in his face broke. Not into a smile, quite, but into something that leaned toward one. Fear and wonder are the same chemical, he repeated, slow, as if setting it somewhere he could find it later. I read it somewhere. Might be wrong. It is not wrong. Who told you that? Camille asked. That they're the same chemical. No one told me. I watched it be true. He glanced at the bus, at the small hands still pressed to the glass. In my work, fear and wonder wear the same face on a man. The trick is which one you feed. And what's your work? He looked back at her. The wind moved between them, and he let the question hang a full second before he answered it with nothing at all. Doyoon is nearly finished. Camille felt the door close on that, so smoothly she almost admired it. He'd walked her right up to the edge of the thing and then simply declined to step off it, and he'd done it without rudeness, which meant he'd done it many times before. A practiced man, a rehearsed answer. She had spent her life around people who deflected out of shame. This was not shame. This was habit-worn smooth as a river stone. You do that well, she said. Do what? Not answer. The line at the corner of his mouth deepened. You notice a great deal, Miss Devereaux. It's the job. 24 faces, 40 times a day. You learn to catch the one that's about to lie before the mouth opens. She tilted her head. Yours didn't twitch. That's rarer than you'd think. For a moment, he studied her with something that was almost respect, and almost caution, and might, she thought later, have been both at once. At the hood, Doyoon said something sharp. One of the men reached in with a wrench. Metal on metal, a grunt, a twist. The bus made a sound Camille hadn't heard it make in the whole 4 years she'd ridden it. A clean, wet cough, and then the low, even breathing of an engine that intended to keep living. The children cheered. 24 voices, muffled through glass. A ragged little wall of sound. Aaliyah's face was smashed against the window, delighted. Camille's arms came unfolded. She hadn't realized how tight she'd been holding herself until the holding stopped. That, she said, was fast. Doyoon wiped his hands on a rag and stepped back, and the tall man walked at last, 3 unhurried steps to the front of the bus, where he looked at the engine the way another man might look at a chessboard after the game was already won. Coolant hose, he said. It slipped. Old clamp. He tightened it and refilled. It will hold to the city. After the city, you replace it. He turned. You should replace all of them. This vehicle is older than some of these children. The vehicle is exactly as old as the budget, Camille said. How did he fix it that fast? The question came out flat and level, and she watched it land. He didn't blink. He is good with engines. He's very good with engines. She took a step closer, and now she was reading him openly, no pretense left in it. 4 men, tool bags, 2 SUVs and a sedan with glass I can't see through, on a road that goes to exactly one place, a county science center and a landfill. You're not coming from the science center. The corner of his mouth moved. No. So who fixes a stranger's school bus in 90 seconds and then stands here like it's nothing? Someone, he said, who knows people. There it was. She let it sit between them, that soft, round nothing of an answer. I know people. The exact shape of every phrase her whole life had taught her to distrust. The landlords who knew a guy, the men at the district who knew how it worked, the ones who always knew people and never gave you their names. I know people, she said back, tasting it. That's a whole answer, huh? It is the true one, and he said it without apology, which was somehow worse, and somehow, strangely, better. Grace had drifted up the shoulder now, cardigan clutched to her chest, close enough to hear. Camille felt her there and didn't send her back. 2 sets of eyes on this man were better than one. His phone rang. He drew it from the inside of his coat without breaking her gaze, glanced once at the screen, and answered in Korean. 2 words, then a pause, then a longer stretch of the language, low and even. Camille didn't need the translation. She knew a rescheduling when she heard one, knew it in her body, the way she knew a rent-late call, the flat authority of a man telling other men to wait, and the certainty underneath it that they would. He lowered the phone. I have moved a meeting, he said, as though she'd asked. On my account. On the account of the road being 1 lane wide and full of children. He almost smiled again. The meeting will keep. Must be nice, Camille said, to be the kind of person meetings keep for. Something flickered, not offense, closer to recognition. He slid the phone away. Behind him, Do-yoon had already begun herding the 4 men back toward the SUVs, wiping wrenches, zipping the tool bag, the whole small operation folding itself back into invisibility. Alvarez leaned out of the bus door. Miss D, she's holding steady. Temp's good. We should roll before that clamp gets ideas. 2 minutes, Mr. Alvarez. The tall man looked at the bus, then back at her, and for a beat neither of them said the thing that the beat was for. Your name, Camille said. He considered it. She saw him consider it. Saw a man decide, in real time, how much of himself to hand over, and she understood suddenly that for him, a name was not a small thing to give. Cha Ji-hwan, he said. Camille Devereaux. Camille. He said it carefully, the way he'd said the coolant hose, the way he said everything, like a word he did not intend to lose. Devereaux. Just Miss Devereaux, to the 24 witnesses in that bus. She almost smiled and stopped herself, because smiling at a man like this, on a road like this, was exactly the sort of thing that came with a bill later. Thank you, Mr. Cha. Truly, you didn't have to move anything for us. I did not have to. He looked at her. I wanted to. The wind pushed at them both. Down at the curve, the reflective triangles caught the flat morning and threw it back red. That's a dangerous thing to want, she said, on a road this narrow. So I am learning, and this time the almost smile finished itself. Small and private, and gone as fast as it came. She turned before he could see what her own face was doing, and walked back toward the bus, and every step of it, she felt the shape of the encounter settling wrong in her chest. Not because he'd been cruel, but because he hadn't. Because a man had come out of a black car on the worst kind of road and looked at her like a window instead of a wall, and had fixed the thing that was broken without being asked, and had refused to tell her what he was. That was the part, not the kindness. The refusal wrapped inside the kindness. She climbed the steps. Alvarez pulled the door shut. 24 faces turned up at her, flushed and thrilled, already retelling it to each other, in the loud crossfire of 9-year-olds who had survived something. Miss Devereaux, did you see? Was that man a spy? Deshawn said it was the FBI. Deshawn does not know what the FBI is, said Priya, with tremendous dignity. Seatbelts, Camille said. Every one of you. Priya, count your row. Aliyah, count yours. And they did it. because she'd built them to do it, and the ordinary machinery of the classroom clicked back into place around her, while her heart kept doing something that was not ordinary at all. Through the window, she watched Cha Ji-hwan walk back to the sedan. He didn't look at the bus again. That, too, she noted. A man with the discipline not to look. He folded himself back into the dark car, and the door closed, and the two SUVs woke up growling, and the whole black shape of it reversed in one smooth choreographed motion, backing off the curve, opening the road, giving her the lane. They let the bus go first. Of course they did. He would have arranged even that. "Everybody hold on," Alvarez called, and eased the bus forward off the dead center of the road, past the reflective triangles, around the blind curve at last, and out into the open straightaway, where the danger was only ordinary again. Grace slid into the seat beside her, cardigan back on, glasses fogged at the edges, and leaned in close so the children wouldn't hear. "Camille, don't. I connect dots for a living. You teach 8th grade history for a living." "Same thing." Grace's voice dropped. That was not a rich guy on his way to a board meeting. 4 men, a mechanic, blacked out glass, and you saw how the little one moved when the tall one lifted his fingers? She swallowed. "I've seen a face like that before. I just can't." She stopped. "It'll come to me. It always comes to me." Camille looked out the window at the rock wall streaming past. Somewhere behind them, the convoy had turned around and gone back to wherever men like that went. Back to the meeting that had waited. Back to the life with the name he'd handed over like it was made of something breakable. "He fixed the bus, Grace." "I know. 90 seconds. He fixed the thing nobody's fixed in 4 years, and then he wouldn't tell me what he does." Grace was quiet a moment. Then, softly, "Men who won't tell you what they do usually have a reason you don't want." Camille didn't answer. She reached into the tote at her feet and found the disposable camera, $19, on sale, still wrapped in the crackle of its plastic. She'd bought it to shoot 24 kids in front of a plasma globe. She turned it over in her hands and did not remember lifting it once on that whole stretch of road. Not for the steam, not for the men, not for the tall stranger who moved meetings. Some part of her wished she had a picture of his face. A larger part was glad she didn't. A photograph was a thing you kept, and she already knew, sitting there with the camera cold in her lap and the science center coming up over the next rise, that Cha Ji-hwan was going to be a thing she'd have to work not to keep. "He looked at you," Grace said, very quietly, "like you were the only thing on that road he understood." "He looked at me like I was a math problem he liked. That's worse. I know it's worse." Camille set the camera back in the tote and pushed it under the seat with her heel, out of reach, like putting away something she didn't trust her own hands around. "Men like that don't like things. They acquire them. He fixed my bus the way you'd pick up a coin off the sidewalk, because it was there, and because he could, and because it cost him nothing to be the one who bent down. And yet you're the one still talking about it." Camille shut her mouth. Grace let her win the silence for exactly 4 seconds. "I'm not saying he's dangerous to you," she said. "I'm saying I've felt that particular quiet before, and every time, it belonged to somebody the newspaper eventually caught up with. I'll place it. Give me a night. Don't place it. Let it go." "You know I can't do that." Grace pulled the tote strap up onto her own shoulder, protective, an old reflex. "It's the same reason you count your kids twice. Some of us are built to check the thing nobody else bothers to check." She softened. "He was kind, Camille. I saw it too. But kind and safe aren't the same country. And you, of all people, know the difference." Camille did know the difference. She'd learned it at 9 years old, across a kitchen table, from a woman who loved her, and still said, "We'll see." Kind was cheap. Kind cost nothing. It was the thing after kind that always cost her. She looked out the window and said nothing, and the not saying was its own kind of answer, and Grace, mercifully, let it be the last word. The bus climbed the last hill. The County Science Center spread out below, low and gray and government cheap, and the children pressed to the glass and forgot the man on the road entirely, because they were 9, and the world in front of them was always bigger than the world behind. Camille didn't forget. In the parking lot, she stood the children in their 2 rows, checked their lanyards, counted them once, counted them twice, Priya to Marcus P., all 24 accounted for, and marched them toward the low gray doors under a banner that read, "Welcome Young Scientists," in letters the county had clearly bought cheap. Deshawn asked her, for the 3rd time, whether the man on the road had been a spy. Aaliyah asked whether they would break down again on the way home. Destiny, who had said almost nothing all morning, slid her small hand into Camille's without a word and held it the whole way across the lot. "We're not going to break down," Camille told them, and believed it, because a stranger with a canvas tool bag had made it true, and because that was exactly the thing that would not stop turning over in her chest. She got them inside. She got them their clipboards. She stood at the back of a dim room while a plasma globe threw purple veins of light across 24 upturned faces, and she should have been fully there, should have been storing every gasp to carry home like coins, and instead, some cool, careful corner of her mind kept walking back down that road to the place where a man had said, "I know people," and refused to blink. She pulled the camera out at last, in the dark, and finally used it. 24 faces washed in electric violet, hands reaching for the glass. She used the whole roll before the day was done. Not one frame of it was for him. She sat very still with her hands around a camera she hadn't used and watched the road unspool in the mirror and let the question sit exactly where he'd left it. "I know people." "That's a whole answer," she said again, to no one, and Grace pretended not to hear, and the bus rolled down into the parking lot, with all 24 of them still breathing. The delivery truck showed up on a Tuesday, and it had no business being there. Camille was on the front steps with a mug going cold in her hand when it pulled into the loop where the buses turned. White van, magnetic sign on the door that read, "County Science Center, Community Outreach," and a young man in a polo climbing out with a clipboard he kept flipping, like the answer was on the 3rd page. Behind him, parked at the curb where no visitor ever parked, sat a black sedan with tinted glass, engine running. She knew that car. She'd stood 3 feet from it on a 2-lane road with 24 children behind her. "Miss Devereaux," the polo said, "we've got a donation drop. 12 microscope kits, a class set of prism blocks, and, he flipped again, a plasma demonstration unit. For the gifted enrichment thing?" "There is no gifted enrichment thing," Camille said. "The district killed it. 3 times. The kid looked at his clipboard like it had lied to him. "It says here it's funded." She set the mug down on the step. Slow. Funded by who? An anonymous donor routed it through our outreach account. He held out the clipboard. "I just need a signature, so it's not on my truck anymore." She didn't sign. She walked past him, past the open back doors of the van stacked with boxes worth more than her whole supply budget, and she went straight for the sedan. The rear window came down before she reached it. Chaji Huan sat inside with a folder closed on his knee, and he had the decency to look like a man caught. "A plasma demonstration unit," she said. "The children liked the one at the museum." His voice was even. "You told me so yourself. Mido and Maravilia, the same chemistry." He'd kept the line. He'd kept her exact words and handed them back like proof of purchase. Any other week that might have landed soft. Not today. "You can't buy your way into my school," she said. "That's what this is. You put your money where I'd have to see it every day. It's equipment for children. It isn't for you. Everything routed through an anonymous donor is for somebody. She stepped back from the car. Take it back. All of it. The kids don't get to depend on a stranger who can vanish. Something moved behind his eyes. Not anger, recognition. He'd expected gratitude and gotten a wall, and the wall interested him more than the thank you would have. Do-yoon, he said, not turning his head. The driver's door opened. Do-yoon came around, bomber jacket zipped to the throat, and Camille braced for whatever a man like that did when his boss was told no. He walked to the van. He started loading boxes back in. Ji-hwan watched her watch it happen. You said take it back. I'm taking it back. Just like that. You didn't ask me to keep the microscopes and lose the plasma. You said all of it. He tilted his head a fraction. So it's all of it. She hadn't expected that either. It knocked her half a step off her own certainty, and she hated how visible that must have been, because his mouth did the thing again, the almost smile that started and then decided against itself. Why are you really here? She said. The polo kid was very busy pretending to check a manifest. Do-yoon slid the last box up the ramp and shut the doors. Ji-hwan opened the folder on his knee. Inside was a single sheet, a museum letterhead, a printed line of thanks. The county board wrote to me, he said. I made a contribution to their capital fund some years ago. They send letters when they want another one. This one mentioned an outreach program on a broken road. He closed the folder. I asked which road. You didn't have to drive it. No. He let that sit. She'd asked a question and he'd answered it, and then left the true part of the answer in the space after, which was the most honest lie she'd ever been handed. He hadn't come about a letter. He'd used a letter to come. Have dinner with me, he said. There it was. She almost laughed, and not the good kind. No. You haven't heard where. It doesn't matter where. A man shows up with a van full of equipment I can't afford, and then asks me to dinner in the same breath. You think that's two things. It's one thing. She picked her mug back up off the step, because her hands needed a job. I've been the girl who was grateful to a generous man. I know how that story pays out. He didn't push. He didn't sweeten it. Didn't name a restaurant she couldn't afford to prove he could. Didn't say the word please like a lever. He nodded once, like she'd told him a fact about the weather. Then no, he said. Okay. The window went up. The sedan pulled out of the loop, unhurried, and the science center van followed it with every box exactly where it had started the morning. Camille stood on the steps until both sets of taillights were gone, and the strangest part, the part she'd chew on for 2 days, was that he'd taken the no as clean as she'd given it. No sulk, no second offer through a side door, which was, of course, exactly the wrong thing for him to do if he wanted her to stop thinking about him. Grace found out by lunch, because Grace found out everything by lunch. A van, she said, dropping her tote on the workroom table hard enough to rattle the coffee pot. A whole van, Camille, and you sent it back. I sent it back. There are children in this building using microscopes older than their parents. And when he leaves, and men like that leave, Grace, those kids learn one more time that the good stuff belongs to someone who can take it away. Camille peeled the lid off a yogurt she didn't want. I'm not building a program on a man's mood. Grace pulled her chair around, the copper curls swinging, and lowered her voice, even though the room was empty. I looked him up. Cha Ji-hwan. Took me a night. She set her phone face down on the table and kept her hand on it, like the screen was hot. There's not much. That's the thing. A man with that kind of money leaves a paper trail a mile long. Galas, boards, ribbon cuttings. Him? 3 photos in 10 years. One's from a shipping company gala. He's in the back. He's not looking at the camera. She turned the phone over, then thought better of it and turned it back. People who spend that much effort not being seen usually have a reason you don't want. You said that already, on the bus. I'm saying it better now. Grace's freckled hand stayed flat on the phone. Kind and safe aren't the same country, and this man has a passport for one and not the other. Camille thought about the boxes going back up the ramp. All of it. She thought about the no landing and not bouncing. He asked me to dinner, she said. Grace closed her eyes. Tell me you said no. I said no. Good, Grace exhaled. Then, quieter, watching her friend too closely. Why do you look like you're mad? You did. Camille didn't have an answer that wouldn't dig the hole deeper, so she ate the yogurt she didn't want and let the bell save her. He came back Thursday, and this time he brought nothing. No van, no folder, no excuse with a letterhead. He was standing by the low wall at the edge of the parking lot when the last bus pulled out, hands in the pockets of a coat that cost more than her car, and he watched the kids stream past him toward the pickup line, without once trying to be part of it. Do-yoon waited by the sedan a respectful distance off, eyes moving, always moving. Camille came out with her arms full of graded worksheets and stopped when she saw him. She thought about turning around. She walked over instead, because turning around would have told him more than she wanted him to know. No van today, she said. You told me the van was the problem. He kept his hands in his pockets. So today, there's no van. There's still a car with a driver who watches exits. Do-yoon watches exits everywhere. In his sleep, I think. Something close to fondness crossed his face and was gone. I can't change what I keep around me. I can change what I bring to your door. Today, I brought nothing. That was the point. The worksheets were digging into her forearms. She shifted them. Say what you came to say then. He took his time. Down the lot, a mother buckled a 9-year-old into a minivan and drove off, and he watched the taillights the way she'd watched his on Tuesday, and she understood he was choosing words the way careful men choose them, knowing that the wrong one closes a door for good. On the road, he said, you had 24 children coming apart, and no help coming, and you made it a lesson about ice becoming water. You didn't lie to them. You didn't tell them nothing was wrong. You gave them something true to hold on to so their hands would stop shaking. He looked at her then, full on. I've watched a lot of people handle a crisis. Most protect themselves. You protected them, and you did it without a single threat. I didn't know a person could run a room that way. That's a very long speech from a man who doesn't answer questions. It's the only true thing I've said to you, standing still. He didn't smile now. I'm not asking you to dinner because I bought you microscopes. I sent those back. There's nothing between us but the thing itself, a breath. I want an evening with the person who turned a dead engine into wonder. No account routed it. No one owes anyone. If the answer is still no, it's no, and I won't come back to the wall. The worksheets pressed a red line into her skin. Somewhere behind her, a door banged and a custodian dragged a trash can, and none of it touched the small circle of quiet he'd built with a handful of sentences. She turned it over the only way she knew how, by looking for the trick. There was money in his voice, and men at his car, and 3 photographs in 10 years, and every reasonable part of her lined up to say no again, and mean it. No influence, she said. You don't fix things for my school. You don't call the board. You don't make the district's problem disappear because you decided to. My program lives or dies on its own, or there's nothing to talk about at all. Agreed. Just like that. You keep saying that. Now the almost smile finished, briefly, honestly. Yes, just like that. It's your program. I'd have no use for it if it were mine. She heard the answer to a question she hadn't known she was asking, and it undid something she'd been holding shut since a boy named Theo taught her what a generous man's help costs. One dinner, she said, somewhere I can pay my half. Somewhere you can pay your half. he agreed, and he said it like a term of a treaty, like he understood it was the whole point and not a formality. She wore the wrap dress, the deep purple midi, the gold sandals, and she stood in front of the mirror longer than she'd admit and told herself it was because the good dress was the only clean one. She touched the little cross at her collarbone once for luck she didn't believe in and drove herself to the restaurant, because arriving in her own car was another way of paying her half. The place was small, Korean, family-run, 10 tables, a menu without prices, designed to intimidate, and a menu with prices that a teacher could survive if she skipped the weekend. He was already there, at a corner table, and he stood when she came in, not a performance of manners, just up on his feet before she reached the chair. He'd left the 3-piece armor at home, soft slate blazer, white shirt open at the collar, no tie. And for the first time, with the collar open and his head turned to pull out her chair, she saw it. The tattoo climbed the left side of his neck toward his jaw. Dark ink, the shape of a fish curling upward, part of it disappearing under the shirt, and part of it there, in the low light, for anyone at the table to read. She looked at it a beat too long. He caught her looking and didn't move to cover it, didn't tug the collar, didn't explain. "You want to ask," he said, sitting. "I want to eat first." She unfolded her napkin. "Then I'll ask everything. That's fair." The waiter came, an older woman who spoke to Ji-hwan in Korean and got 3 quiet sentences back, and whatever he said made her laugh and swat the air near his shoulder like he was a nephew who came around too rarely. She left. Camille raised an eyebrow. "She thinks I don't eat enough," he said. "Do you?" "No." He turned his water glass a quarter and left it. "You said you'd been the grateful girl before, to a generous man." He wasn't prying, he laid it out flat, the way she'd laid out her one condition in the parking lot, an even trade. "You don't have to tell me." "But I heard it, and I've been carrying it since Tuesday." She hadn't meant to open that door tonight, but he'd sent the van back with every box on it, and he'd taken the no clean, and he'd stood by a wall and promised to touch nothing that was hers, and a woman gets tired of guarding a thing no one's actually reaching for. "His name was Theo," she said. "He was generous. He paid for things before I could reach my wallet. He fixed problems I hadn't finished describing, and every single time it felt like a gift." She turned her own glass now, matching him without meaning to. "It took me 2 years to understand it wasn't generosity, it was accounting. He was building a balance where I'd always owe, so that the day I got smarter than the room, or louder than him, he could point at everything he'd given and ask what I'd given back." She looked up. "He hated that I was the smartest person at every table. He didn't say it. He just made sure I was always a little in his debt, so I'd shrink to keep the peace." Ji-hwan was still. Not the frozen still of a man deciding what to say. The still of a man making sure he'd heard all of it before he moved. "That's why the van," he said. "Not the money, the ledger. That's why the van." He nodded slowly, and then he did something she wouldn't have predicted. He took out his phone, opened it, and turned the screen toward her. The museum letter, the Capital Fund contribution. He scrolled, and there was a second line, a transfer, reversing the outreach donation, dated Tuesday afternoon, hours after he'd left her steps. "So there's no balance," he said. "Nothing given, nothing owed. If this dinner is the beginning of anything, it starts at 0, and it stays there, because I saw what a man built by keeping a woman in his debt, and I don't want the thing that costs you that." He put the phone away. "You'll pay your half tonight. You'll pay your half every time. I won't let you win an argument by feeling you have to." The waiter came back with small dishes, banchan crowding the table, and set them down between 2 people who had gone quiet in a way that wasn't awkward. Camille looked at the fish curling up his neck, and at the man who'd reversed a donation just so a teacher wouldn't feel a debt, and she felt the old careful walls she'd built against generous men find nothing to push against, and lean, and start, just start, to give. "After we eat," she said, and her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm asking about the tattoo, and the car, and the 4 men with the tool bags." "After we eat," he agreed, and passed her the first dish. "You can ask me anything. I'll tell you what I can. And when I can't tell you something, I'll say that it's something I can't tell you, instead of lying to you." He met her eyes. "That's the most I'll promise. It's also more than I've promised anyone." She took the dish. Their fingers didn't touch, and somehow that mattered more than if they had. Outside, past the window, Do-yoon leaned against a car in the dark and watched the street, and neither of them looked at him. And for one evening, the road with the broken bus and the 24 frightened children felt like the beginning of something instead of the warning it should have been. Priya was the one who found the crack in the science fair bridge, and she found it at the worst possible second, 30 minutes before the doors opened. She pressed one finger on the popsicle stick truss, and the whole span sagged like a wet napkin, and 11 kids went quiet at once, and Camille felt the morning start to slide. The gym smelled like cardboard and hot glue. Folding tables ran wall to wall under a paper banner the 8th graders had painted crooked, and every table held a project that some kid had bled over for 2 weeks. The bridge was the centerpiece. The bridge was supposed to hold a gallon of water suspended from its middle while parents watched. The bridge was now a hinge. "It broke," Deshawn said, and his voice cracked on the second word. "It bent," Camille said. "Bent and broke are different countries." She was already down on her knees in the emerald blouse and the mustard skirt, Rupa too, sleeves pushed to the elbow, turning the little structure in her hands to find where the load was going wrong. Bad joint, second from the left. Some glue that never fully cured, which meant the whole thing had been living a lie since Tuesday. She needed clamps and time, and she had neither. That was when the side door opened, and Cha Ji-hwan walked into a children's science fair like it was a place he was allowed to be. He wore the slate gray blazer, Rupa too, collar open, no tie, and he stopped just inside the door, the way a man stops when he has learned that walking straight at a room full of nervous people is its own kind of threat. He did not announce himself. He looked at the table, at the sagging bridge, at Camille on her knees, and he read the whole disaster in about 4 seconds. "Who built it?" he said. "Not who broke it. Who built it?" "We did," Priya said, chin up, ready to fight for it. "Then we don't throw it away." He set a paper bag on the table. Inside were rubber bands, wooden clothespins, and a small bottle of the good glue, the kind that grabs in 90 seconds, and Camille looked up at him with a question she didn't ask out loud, and he answered it anyway. "I passed a hardware store. I was early." He had not been early to anything by accident in his life. She let it go. What happened next, she would replay later, in the dark, trying to find the exact moment the wall she'd built came down. He didn't take the bridge from the kids. He got down on the floor next to Deshawn, at the boy's height, and he handed him a clothespin, and he said, "This is a clamp. You are the clamp now." He gave Priya the glue and told her she had steady hands, which was true, and she straightened 3 inches taller. He gave the rubber bands to a small girl named Aaliyah and said the tension had to be even, the same on both sides, or the bridge would learn to lean, and Aaliyah nodded like she'd been handed the launch codes. He knew her name, Aaliyah. He knew Deshawn. He'd met these children once, on a broken road, weeks ago, in the middle of steam and panic, and he had kept their names. Camille sat back on her heels and watched a man rebuild a 4th-grade bridge with 11 children as his crew, and she felt something in her chest do a thing she did not have permission to feel. They clamped the bad joint. They rubber banded the trusses even. Ji-hwan held the span level while the glue took 90 seconds, counting out loud in English so the kids could count with him. And at 60, Deshawn whispered, "It's holding," and at 90, the whole gym exhaled. The bridge held the gallon of water at 2:15 that afternoon in front of 40 parents. It bowed. It didn't break. Priya cried and pretended she wasn't crying, and Deshawn told every adult in the room that the joint failed because the glue wasn't fully cured, using the exact words, wearing them like a medal. Ji-won watched from the back wall, near the door, hands folded in front of him, and he did not step forward to take 1 ounce of the credit, and Camille noticed that too. She was noticing everything about him now. It had stopped being caution. She wasn't sure what it had become. Grace found her by the juice table during cleanup. Grace had a paper cup in one hand and a face that meant business in the other. "He knew Deshawn's name," Grace said. "He's good with kids." "Camille," Grace lowered her voice. "Men like that don't get good with kids. They get good at rooms. That's a skill. That's a trained thing." She glanced across the gym at the door, but he was already gone, the way he was always already gone. "I'm still looking, by the way. I told you I'd put a face to it. Give me a few more nights." "You found 3 photos in 10 years. "I found 3 photos in 10 years, Grace agreed. "And that itself is the finding. Regular men leave a trail. He left a hole shaped like a man." She drank the juice like it had wronged her. Nobody scrubs themselves that clean by accident. Camille didn't answer. Across the gym, Aaliyah was showing her mother the rubber band trick, saying the tension has to be even on both sides, and Camille thought about a man on the floor at a child's height, and she said nothing at all. The inspections started that same week. The first one came Monday. A man in a windbreaker with a clipboard and a laminated badge appeared at the front office and told Deborah Ellison he was there for an unscheduled facilities review, and he spent 2 hours walking the halls, writing things down. The boiler was out of code. The east stairwell railing was 3/4 of an inch too low. The playground mulch was the wrong depth. None of it was dangerous. All of it was expensive. The second inspection came Thursday. Different man, different agency, same clipboard energy. Fire egress this time. The propped open door by the gym was a violation. The extension cords in Camille's own classroom, the ones she ran because the district gave her 2 outlets for 30 devices, those were a violation. He photographed them. He wrote a number on a form. The number had a due date. The third one arrived Friday and didn't even bother with a windbreaker. A woman in a pantsuit, environmental this time, soil and drainage, and she spent 40 minutes in the yard with a probe and a phone camera and told nobody anything. She left a card with a county seal and no name a person could hold on to. Camille watched her from the window and got the specific, crawling feeling of being counted. Not the building, herself, her program, the 11 kids on a list in her pocket, all of it being tallied by people who would never say the total to her face. By Friday afternoon, the front office had a folder that hadn't existed on Monday, and the folder was getting fat. By the following Tuesday, there had been 4 inspections in 9 school days, and Deborah called Camille into the office and shut the door. "I've been here 19 years, Deborah said. She had the Amasia blazer on, the reading glasses on their beaded chain, and the tiredness in her face had gone somewhere past tired. "We get 1 facilities review a year. Sometimes we skip a year." She spread 4 citation forms on the desk like a bad hand of cards. 4, in 9 days, from 4 different offices that don't talk to each other. She looked at Camille. Somebody made a phone call. Somebody with the kind of reach that makes 4 different offices all decide, in the same week, that our little school needs a very close look. Camille's throat went dry. "You think it's about the land?" "I think," Deborah said slowly, That every time this neighborhood gets $1 more expensive, somebody does math about the dirt under this building, and I think the math just got done. She tapped the top citation. The estimated cost to bring the school into full compliance, all 4 reviews stacked, ran to a number with too many zeros. We don't have this. If we don't fix it, they can move to condemn. If they condemn, the property goes to auction. And I have watched 3 schools in this county go exactly that way. She took her glasses off. So I need you to tell me something, and I need the truth. Ask. The man at the science fair, the one who fixed the bridge. Deborah's eyes were steady. Grace says you know him. Is he connected to whoever's making these phone calls? And Camille opened her mouth to say no. Absolutely not. He promised he wouldn't touch the school. He reversed the donation. He swore off influence. And she realized she had no way to know that. She realized the only thing she had was his word. And his word was a man who fixed engines in 4 minutes and left holes shaped like himself in 10 years of public record. I don't know, she said, and hated it. That night, he was waiting by the low wall of the parking lot when the last bus pulled out. No car in front of the meter, no folder. He stood the way he stood, hands loose, koi tattoo climbing the left side of his throat in the last of the light, Rupa too, and he watched her come across the lot with her keys already in her fist. Something's wrong, he said. Not a question. 4 inspections in 9 days. She stopped 6 feet from him, the distance she always kept, the distance that had started to feel like the only honest thing between them. Boiler, railings, fire code, extension cords, different agencies, same week. My principal thinks somebody made phone calls. She watched his face. She watched it the way Grace had taught her to watch it, for the flicker, for the tell. So I'm going to ask you one thing, and I need you to remember what you promised me at that dinner. Ask, did you do this? He was very still, and then something moved through his face that she had not seen before. Not guilt, not the smooth blankness he wore like the gray blazer, something colder, something that looked for 1 second like a man recognizing a signature on a letter he did not write. No, he said, and then, slower, the word landing like a stone dropped in a well. But I know how it's done. That's not an answer. It's the most honest one I have. He didn't step closer. He gave her the 6 feet. I did not make those calls. I would not touch your school. I told you the program lives or dies on its own, and I meant it. His jaw tightened. But 4 offices in 9 days is not a bureaucracy waking up. That's a hand. Someone paid for that. Who? And there it was. The pause. The exact pause she'd been waiting for since a broken road weeks ago. His mouth opened, and she watched him choose, in real time, between the truth and the thing he'd promised at the dinner, that when he couldn't tell her something, he would say so, instead of lying. I don't know yet, he said. Then, because he had promised, and even if I did, some of what I know, I can't say. Not tonight. That's the thing I told you I'd tell you when it came. It's here. This is me, telling you. She should have walked to her car. That was the smart move, the Grace move, the move that kept her out of holes shaped like men. Instead, she asked him to help her carry the science fair projects to the storage closet, because they were still sitting in the empty gym, and the building was empty, and the janitor had gone home, and she did not want to be alone in the parking lot with the size of that number Deborah had shown her. He carried the planets. That was the detail she'd keep. She loaded his arms with the papier-mâché solar system the 3rd graders had built. 9 painted balls on wire, Saturn's ring made from a paper plate, and she took the cardstock and the tub of glue and the box of construction paper stars, and they walked the dark hallway together to the storage closet by the gym, and the only light was the red glow of the exit sign and the blue wash of the emergency fixtures. He set the planets down on the shelf like they were made of glass. He put Jupiter next to Saturn without being told which order they went. He knew the order of the planets. Of course he did. This man who fixed engines and scrubbed himself out of the public record also knew, without thinking, that Mars comes before Jupiter, and she stood there in the storage closet, holding a box of paper stars, and she felt the last of the wall go. "I found this," he said. He reached into the inside pocket of the blazer and took out a book. Small, hardback, the corner soft with handling. The Snowy Day. Ezra Jack Keats. There was a library pocket glued inside the front cover with her school's stamp, and a name written in a child's careful pencil on the checkout card. Marcus P. "Marcus lost it," Camille said. Her voice did a thing. 3 weeks ago, he cried for 2 days. He thought he'd have to pay for it, and his mom, she stopped. "It was under the 3rd seat of the bus," Jiwon said. "Doyoon found it when we checked the engine that day. I've had it since." He held it out to her. Not to Marcus. To her. "I didn't give it to the boy directly. I thought, that's not my place. You give it back. It should come from you. It's your classroom." He had learned the boundary. She had drawn one line, one time, at a dinner. "You don't fix my school. You don't buy your way in." And he had taken it and extended it on his own to a place she hadn't even named. He'd found a way to do the kind thing without making a child owe him. He'd found a way to do the kind thing without making a child owe him. He'd found a way to do the kind thing without making a child owe him. He'd found a way to do the kind thing without making a child owe him. She took the book. Their fingers touched this time. She let them. And in a dark storage closet that smelled of paper and dried glue, with a box of construction paper stars pressed between them and the exit sign burning red over the door, Camille Devereaux kissed a man she was fairly sure was dangerous, and he kissed her back, like a man who had waited weeks for permission and would have waited weeks more. The box of stars slid. Neither of them caught it. Paper stars went everywhere across the closet floor, and she laughed against his mouth, and he almost smiled, the smile she'd seen start and stop on a broken road, except this time it finished, and it was the most defenseless thing she had ever seen on his face. They came apart. 6 inches now, not 6 feet. "I have to give Marcus his book," she said, breathless, holding it against her chest like it was the actual thing that mattered. "Give Marcus his book," he agreed. "And I have to figure out how to find a number my school doesn't have before somebody condemns it." His face changed at that. The softness folded away and the cold thing came back, the thing that had looked at the phantom signature, and he said, quietly, "Let me look." "Not touch. Look. I'll find out who's calling those offices. I won't do anything. I won't spend $1. I'll just tell you the name." He waited. "You can do whatever you want with the name. That's still your program, your school, your call. Look. Not touch." She thought about it in the red light, with her lips still warm. "The name," she said. "That's all. You find the name, you give it to me, and I decide what happens next. If you cross that line, I won't. If you cross it, we're done." Not angry, just done. "I understand the line," he said, and she believed him, and later she would think about how much she had wanted to believe him, and whether those were the same thing. She knelt to gather the paper stars. He knelt too, on the other side, and they picked them up in the dark, blue and yellow and silver stars, and for a few minutes, neither of them said anything, and it was the closest thing to peace she'd felt since the district killed the program the 3rd time. "Marcus is going to lose his mind," she said, turning the little book over in her hands. "He named the dog in the story after his own dog. He told me that 4 times. She pressed a silver star flat against her knee. "You could have handed it to him yourself, you know." You'd have been the hero. Kid remembers you forever. That's exactly why I didn't. Jihuan set a blue star in her open palm. A boy shouldn't owe a stranger for his own book. He should get it back from his teacher and think the world just works that way sometimes. That things come back. He was quiet a beat. Let him believe that a while longer. She looked at him across the pile of paper stars in the red light and understood that he had thought about this, actually thought about it, the way she thought about which child got called on first, so the shy ones warmed up before the loud ones took the air. He had done the invisible math of not making someone small. Nobody had ever done that math for her. Theo had done the opposite math his whole life. Then his phone lit up in his pocket. He looked at it. Something crossed his face, a name on a screen, a message she couldn't see, and he stood, and the temperature of the man changed, and she watched him become the person from the black convoy again, the one who raised 2 fingers and made grown men fall silent. I have to go, he said. The reunion you never miss? A different kind of meeting. He looked down at her, still on her knees among the stars, and, for a second, the 2 men in him, the one who knew the order of the planets and the one who left holes in the record, stood in the same body at the same time. Camille, whatever comes in the next few weeks, remember this part. Remember that I gave you the name and let you choose. Whatever else you hear about me, that part is true. Why are you saying it like that? He didn't answer. He was already walking toward the red exit light, already reassembling into the other man, and the door swung shut behind him with a soft click that sounded, in the empty school, much louder than it was. Camille finished picking up the stars alone. She drove home with the snowy day on the passenger seat, and her lips still remembering, and she almost didn't check her phone at the red light on Vermont. Almost. Grace had texted 4 times. The last one was a photo. Camille opened it at the light. It was a scan of an old newspaper, a business section, 10 years faded, and the headline was about a shipping company and a federal filing. And there, in the grainy gala photo at the bottom, in the back row, not looking at the camera, was a younger man in a black suit with something dark climbing the left side of his throat. Under the photo, Grace had typed 1 line. I put the face to it. Call me before you see him again. His name isn't the only thing that isn't in the papers. The light turned green. Camille did not move. Somewhere behind her, a car honked, and she sat at a green light on Vermont, with a child's library book on the seat beside her and the taste of him still on her mouth, staring at a 10-year-old photograph of the man she had kissed 40 minutes ago, and the whole shape of the last few weeks began, very slowly, to turn over and show her its other side. She read the article 3 times in the parking lot of her own apartment before she went upstairs. Engine off, phone propped against the wheel. The photo Grace had sent was small and gray and 10 years old, but the man at the back of that shipping company gala was the same man who had counted 90 seconds over a popsicle stick bridge that afternoon. Same straight shoulders, same koi climbing the neck. The caption under the photo did not use his name. The body of the article did. Cha Ji-hwan, listed twice. Once as an associate, once as a person of interest in a federal filing that never went anywhere. Camille brought the phone inside and set it face down on the counter. She made tea she did not drink. She let it go cold and made another. Grace called twice. Camille let it ring both times, then texted back 1 line. I need to hear it from him first. Grace answered fast. That's exactly what a man like that counts on. Camille put the phone in the drawer, in the kitchen, the one with the takeout menus she never used, and she shut it. She slept 4 hours. She graded 9 lab sheets at the counter before the sun came up, because her hands needed something to do that had a right answer at the end. She did not call him. She drove to the school like every other morning, and she taught the water cycle to 24 children who believed, completely, that fog was just a cloud that got tired. She let them believe it. She counted them twice at recess, out of a habit that started on a road 3 weeks ago. Priya, to Marcus P., 24, fine. At 3:40, she texted him, 2 words, tonight, alone. He was on the low wall by the parking lot when she came out. No car in sight. Duyun, nowhere she could see. He stood when the door opened, the way he always stood, and something in her chest cracked a little, at how well she already knew the shape of that motion. She stopped 6 feet away. She had the printout in her bag. She had folded it into quarters so the crease ran straight through his younger face. Grace found a picture, she said. 10 years old, shipping company, federal filing. She took the paper out. She did not hand it to him. She held it so he could see it. That's you, in the back, not looking at the camera. He looked at the paper. He looked at it the way a man looks at his own signature on a document he signed a long time ago and has never once forgotten. He did not reach for it. Yes, he said. 1 word, no flinch in it, no scramble. That's you, she said again, because she needed the second confirmation, the way she'd read the article, a second and a third time. That is me. He kept his hands where she could see them, loose at his sides. The filing is real. The company is real. What they were investigating is real. The parking lot was empty except for a maintenance cart parked crooked by the fence. A crow walked the top of it, unbothered. Camille heard her own breath and made it slow down. Say the word, she said. The one that isn't in the papers. Grace said your name wasn't the only thing missing. His jaw shifted. When he spoke, it was even, and it was quiet, and it cost him something. She could see travel across his face, and then get put away. There is an organization, he said. Korean, old. My family was inside it, before I could choose. I am not a soldier, and I have never been. What I am, is the man they send, when a thing needs to be understood, before it is decided. He paused. Some of what I do is legitimate. Shipping, property. Some of it is not. I have not lied to you about a single thing, but I let you fill the space with a better man than the one who was standing there. The crow lifted off the cart and was gone over the gym roof. She had known. That was the part that sat wrong in her stomach. Some quiet arithmetic in the back of her head had been adding up the men and the tool bags and the rescheduled meetings for 3 weeks, and she had let the sum stay unfinished because the answer was inconvenient to a woman who had just been kissed in a supply closet. She had done to herself, a little, what she was about to accuse him of doing to her. She pushed the thought down. It could be true, and he could still be wrong. Both things could sit in the same lot at the same time. Camille felt the ground of the last 3 weeks tilt under her and slide, slow, the way the article had tilted it in the car, the bridge. The book returned through her hands instead of the child's. The 90 seconds. The reverse donation dated the same afternoon she'd said no. All of it still true. All of it now sitting on top of a thing he had watched her not know. You knew what I'd assume, she said. Not a question. I knew. And you let me. Yes. She had promised herself in the car that she would not cry in this parking lot, and she did not. Her voice went somewhere flatter and steadier than crying, somewhere she recognized from a long time ago. Do you know what Theo did, she said, that took me 2 years to name? Tell me. He never lied either. She folded the paper back along its crease. He just let me keep being wrong about something, because being wrong kept me small. He knew I thought the money came free. He let me think it, and by the time I found the ledger, I was already inside it. She put the paper in her bag. You didn't hand me a debt. You handed me a whole man who didn't exist and let me fall for him. Jihuan took that, the way a man takes a blow he has decided in advance not to block. He did not step forward. He did not reach for her arm. He did not do the thing every part of his training and every part of his want must have been telling him to do, which was to close the distance and make his case with his hands and his nearness. "You are right," he said. "Don't," she said. "Don't agree with me to make it end soft." "I am not agreeing to make it soft." His voice stayed level. "I am agreeing because you are right. I told myself I was protecting the thing between us by letting it grow before the truth could crush it. That was a coward's math. I have done a great many hard things, and I chose the soft lie because I did not want to watch your face do what it is doing right now." Her face. She had no idea what it was doing. She only knew what her chest was doing, which was folding inward around a thing that had felt, for 3 weeks, like the first easy breath she'd taken since she was 9 years old. "I can't," she said. "I teach children whose parents trust me with them on a road with no shoulder. I run a program the district already thinks is a liability. I cannot have a man in my life whose name is a federal filing and whose truth arrives in pieces on my terms only when I catch him." She shook her head once. "It isn't the tattoo. It isn't the men with the tool bags. It's that you looked at me, knowing I was building a stranger, and you let me build him." "I know. So we're done." He was quiet for a moment that stretched past comfortable and kept going. "All right," he said. No argument, no offer to fix it, to prove it, to buy back the ground he'd lost with some gesture large enough to bury the objection. He stood exactly where he was, and he let the word be the last word. That, more than anything, undid her a little. Theo would have argued. Theo would have turned it around inside a minute, made her the unreasonable one, made her feel the door was her fault. Jihuan just stood there and held the distance she'd set like it was a thing she owned and he had no right to cross. "The name," she said. "The person who's been calling the county on the school. You said you'd find it and give it to me and let me choose." "I have not finished," he said. "When I have it, you will have it. That does not change because this changed. I gave you my word on that separately." He paused. "If you would rather it come from Do-yoon or in an envelope with no one attached to it, I can do that too. You decide how it reaches you." "An envelope," she said, before she could think about it. "No one attached. Then that is how it comes." One more thing. She made herself look at him while she said it, because she owed the ending that much honesty. "The children like you, Priya, Deshawn, Marcus. You memorized their names, and you fixed their bridge, and you gave the book back the right way. That was real. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't, and I'm not going to let you turn it into a lie, just because the man who did it wasn't the one I thought." Her voice held. "So you were kind to them, and you'll stay away from them, both." "Both," he said. "You have my word on the second the way you had it on the first." "Your word." She almost laughed, and it came out wrong. "That's the trouble, isn't it? It's good. It's just narrow. You keep every promise you make, and you make sure never to make the one that would cost you." He absorbed that too. He did not defend the shape of his own honesty. He simply inclined his head, once, the way she'd seen him do to Do-yoon across a road, an acknowledgement that a thing had been said correctly and did not need repeating. She nodded. She could not think of anything else to say that wouldn't come out as the thing she was not going to let herself say, so she turned and walked to her car, and she did not look back, and she heard no footsteps behind her, and when she pulled out of the lot, the low wall was empty, and there was no black sedan anywhere on the street. The school did not care that her heart was rearranging itself. The pressure kept its own calendar. Monday there was a letter from the county, on real letterhead, not a citation this time, a notice of consolidated review, and Deborah read it out loud in her office, with her reading glasses pushed up and her thumb pressing the bridge of her nose. 4 agencies. 1 combined finding. The building had failed enough separate inspections in enough separate weeks that the failures were now being read together, and read together they told a story the county was obligated to act on. Structural, environmental, egress. The word Deborah stopped on was condemnation. Not a threat, a step, a box on a form that a person could check. They gave us 90 days, Deborah said, to bring every finding into compliance. Every one. She set the letter down. The number to do it is somewhere past what this district would spend on a school it already wants to close. Camille stood at the window that looked out on the playground and the mulch that was too shallow and the east stair rail that was 3/4 of an inch too low, and she did the arithmetic in her head the way she'd done it with $41 on her desk a month ago, and it came out the same way it always came out. Short. They're not fixing it, Camille said. They're pricing it, so we can't. That's how it's done. Deborah took her glasses off. Someone told me that a month ago, every time this neighborhood ticks up, someone runs the numbers on the land under this building. I've watched it circle for years. This is the first time it landed. Camille thought about the woman in the pantsuit with no name and the county seal on her card, the one who'd stood in the drainage swale writing on a clipboard. She thought about the word Jihuan had used in the parking lot the night of the book. A hand. Someone's paying for it. I don't know whose yet. She did not say his name to Deborah. She held it behind her teeth. There's a board vote, Deborah said. On the compliance package, 30 days out. Public session. If they vote to accept the county's finding, instead of funding the fix, the building goes to the county. After that, it's a formality and a padlock. Camille kept her eyes on the mulch. She thought about the boiler that was fine until an inspector decided it wasn't, about a stair rail that had held children for 19 years and was suddenly a violation, about how a building could stand perfectly still while a paper stack around it grew tall enough to bury it. Nothing about the school had changed. Only the file had changed. 90 days, she repeated, and a number we don't have. A number nobody expects us to have. Deborah folded her hands on the desk. That's the design of it. You don't stop a school by knocking it down. You stop it by writing down everything wrong with it on the same day and handing the owner a bill they were always going to refuse. And the program? Deborah's face did the thing it did when she was about to be kind at her own expense. The program was already dead, Camille. If the building goes, the program doesn't have a floor to stand on. Camille went back to her classroom and sat at the desk where she'd counted out her own money, and she took the folded list of 11 names out of the drawer where she'd kept it, the children the district had cut in the last round, and she smoothed it flat under her hand. She was very tired of being the person in the room who could see exactly what was happening and could not stop any of it. She had been that person at 9, at the kitchen table, hearing "we'll see" in the voice that meant no. She had told herself for 18 years that she was building a life where she'd never have to be her again. Here she was again. She did not call Grace, who would say "I told you." She did not call the one number she wanted to call, because she had ended that herself in a parking lot, and she was not going to be the woman who set a line and crossed it the first time she needed something. She stayed after the buses left. She wrote out, by hand, on the good paper, a request to speak at the public board session. 3 minutes. That was what the public got. She would take her 3 minutes, and she would stand in front of the tables, and she would be, one more time, a black woman with a good argument and no leverage, asking men who had already decided to please, decide differently. She knew how that went. She had a lifetime of knowing how that went. She addressed the envelope, she stamped it. She walked it to the box on the corner in the dark, and dropped it in, and heard the metal mouth swing shut, and she stood on the curb for a second, under the one streetlight that worked, and felt the whole thing pressing down the way it had pressed down the first week, before the road, before the bus broke, before a man got out of a black sedan and looked at her like she was a window in a wall of doors. Her phone buzzed in her coat. Not a call, a photo from a number she didn't have saved, a number with no name. She almost didn't open it. She thought it was Grace on a borrowed line, or a parent, or nothing. It was a scan of a document, county letterhead, but not the letter she'd already seen. An environmental assessment, soil and drainage, the findings she recognized, but the date in the corner of the assessment was wrong. It was dated 3 weeks before the inspector in the pantsuit had ever set foot on the property. The report had been written before the inspection that was supposed to produce it. There was no message with the photo, no name, no one attached. Camille stood under the broken and then working streetlight and looked at a date that could not exist, and for the first time in a week, the thing pressing down on her chest lifted just enough to let one clear thought through, and the thought was not about him at all. The thought was, they wrote the ending before they ran the test. She screenshotted the photo. She saved it twice. She did not text back a thank you to the number with no one attached, because that had been the arrangement, and because her hands were already busy, and because somewhere under the exhaustion, a different engine had just turned over, quiet, and caught. The envelope came on a Tuesday, slid under the wiper of Camille's car while she was inside teaching the water cycle for the 2nd week running. No stamp, no name, just her last name in block letters, pressed hard enough to score the paper. She opened it in the stairwell where nobody could watch her face. One sheet, a photocopy of a corporate filing, and a name circled twice in black ink, Sang Hoon Yoon. Beside it, a second word in the same hand, Ash, and below that, 3 lines that turned the last 2 months inside out. She read them standing up. Then she sat down on the 3rd step and read them again. The inspections were never about the building. That was the first line, and it landed like a hand on the back of her neck. The second line, the man paying for them, did not want the land. The third line, he wanted a reason for Cha Ji-hwan to break, in public, over a woman. She lowered the page. For weeks, she had built the story one way. Somebody wanted the ground under the school, the way Deborah always warned, the way developers always did. Squeeze the building, price out the district, buy the lot at auction, put up condos where the gym used to be. It had a shape she recognized. It fit the world she already believed in. And it was wrong. She looked at the circled name and felt the whole picture rotate, slow, like a key finally catching the tumblers. The provocative citations, the 4 agencies in 9 days, the environmental report written 3 weeks before the test that was supposed to produce it. None of it was clumsy. It was theater. You do not write an ending before the test unless you already know nobody will read the file for the truth. You write it to make noise. You write it to make a legitimate man do something illegitimate to protect what he loves. Ash never wanted the school. He wanted Ji-won to walk into a county office and lean on someone, to make a threat with a face on it, to use the muscle he had spent 20 years keeping invisible, right out in daylight, over a black school teacher and 24 children, so that Ash could film it, file it, and hand a legitimate empire to the men who had been waiting a decade for one clean photograph. The school was bait. She was the pressure point. She had been standing on a trapdoor the whole time and calling it a floor. Camille pressed the heel of her hand flat against the page. She thought of the night in the parking lot. Ji-hwan, taking her line without a single word of defense. All right. She had read it as a man too proud to fight for her. She saw it now for what it was. He had known, or half known, what the pressure was for, and he had refused to give Ash the thing Ash was buying. He had let her walk. He had let the school burn slow rather than throw the one punch that would have handed his enemy the whole board. He never made the promise that would cost him, she had told him. Your word is good, it's just narrow. She had been wrong about that too. She folded the sheet along its old creases and slid it into the inside pocket of her bag, the one with the zipper. Then she went back up the stairs and taught the second half of the water cycle, because there were 24 children who needed to know where rain went, and because her hands, for the first time in weeks, were steady. That night she did not call the number with no name. The arrangement was the arrangement, but she stood at her kitchen counter with the two documents side by side, the assessment with the impossible date, and the filing with the circled name, and she saw how they clicked together. One proved the fraud, the other proved the motive. Alone, each was a curiosity. Together, they were a floor a lawyer could stand on. She called Adrian Colston at 6:10 the next morning. Adrian answered on the second ring the way she answered everything, already awake, already 3 steps ahead. You never call before 7. Somebody's dying or somebody's lying. Lying, Camille said. On county letterhead, I need 40 minutes and a legal pad. They met in Adrian's office before the courts opened. Adrian read the environmental assessment first, then the date on the inspection card, then the assessment date again. She set them down. She took off the gold-framed glasses and folded them. They wrote the finding before they ran the test. 3 weeks before. That's not aggressive. Adrian tapped the letterhead once. That's fabricated. A finding is a legal instrument. You can't backdate the science and forward date the seizure. Somebody at the county signed a document that describes a soil test that hadn't happened. She looked up. Who gave you this? I can't say. Camille. I can't say, and it doesn't matter, because it's real and it's checkable. You can pull the county's own timestamp. You don't need the messenger. Adrian held her eyes for a long moment. Then she put the glasses back on and reached for the legal pad, and Camille knew she had her. The vote's in 11 days, Adrian said. That's not a lot of runway, but a fabricated environmental finding is the kind of thing that doesn't just lose a vote, it ends careers. Whose career is the question. Raymond Pearsall, Camille said. The treasurer. He's the one who's had his thumb on this the whole year. Adrian wrote the name in block capitals and underlined it. Then let's find out what Raymond bought with a lie. What Raymond bought took 9 days to surface, and it surfaced because Adrian knew where the septic tanks of municipal finance were buried. There was a shell. There was always a shell. A limited liability company registered 4 months back, out of state, with a purchase option on the school lot that would trigger the instant the county took the building through condemnation. The signature on the option was buried under 3 layers, but the money behind it wasn't hard to trace once you knew to look for a shipping-adjacent property fund. It ran back to Sang Hoon Yoon, and Pearsall, it turned out, had a second mortgage he could not carry and a consulting fee from a name he could not explain. He's not the architect, Adrian said, laying the papers in a row on Camille's classroom table after the last bell, the little chairs pushed in around them. He's the doorman. Somebody paid him to hold the door open at the county and keep the item moving toward that vote. The environmental finding is the crowbar. The shell is the getaway car. She squared the pages. You bring this into a public meeting and the vote doesn't happen. It can't. No board member is going to raise a hand for a package with a forged document in it, on camera, with a lawyer in the second row. Camille looked at the little chairs. She thought of 11 names on a list in her drawer, and 1 child's book still on her shelf. Then I want the second row, she said. The board met on a Thursday night in the multi-purpose room of the district building, under lights that hummed, at tables arranged in a horseshoe. Pearsall sat at the center right, ruddy, thick through the shoulders, his class ring catching the light every time he shuffled his agenda. The consolidated review was item 7. The purchase option was not on the agenda at all, which was, Adrian murmured, the whole point. Camille wore the blazer, royal blue over the cream blouse, the black slacks, the black heels. She had put it on that morning like armor, and it had held all day. She signed the public comment sheet in a firm hand and took a seat in the second row beside Adrian, who had a leather case on her knees and the patience of a woman who had waited in worse rooms. Deborah sat one row up, spine straight, reading glasses on their beaded chain, and did not know yet what was coming. Grace sat at the back with her tote bag and her copper curls, and her habit of checking what nobody bothered to check, and she caught Camille's eye once and mouthed a single word. "Ready?" Camille nodded. They called item 7 at 7:40. Pearsall read the finding aloud in the flat voice of a man performing routine. The 4 agencies, the single consolidated result, the 90-day figure that the district could not meet, the recommendation to accept the county's determination and release the property. He set it up clean. He asked for a motion. A board member to his left lifted a pen to second. Camille stood. 3 minutes, she said. I signed for them. The chair, an older woman with tired eyes, glanced at the sheet and waved her forward. Pearsall's ring stopped moving on the table. Camille walked to the little podium with its dying microphone and set down 2 pages. She did not raise her voice. She had learned, on a broken road with 24 screaming children, that you do not outshout panic. You give it something to do. This finding describes a soil and drainage assessment, she said. Here is the assessment. Here is the date the county's own inspector logged the field test. She held up the first page, then the second. The report is dated 3 weeks before the test that produced it. The ending was written before the test was run. The room shifted, not loud. A dozen people leaning the same half-inch forward. You can't fix that with a correction, Camille said. A finding is a legal instrument. This one is fiction, and I think the board should ask, who benefits from a fiction that hands this building to the county in 90 days? She turned 1 page toward Pearsall. Because there's a purchase option, registered 4 months ago, that triggers the day this lot is condemned. It isn't on tonight's agenda. It's the only thing tonight's agenda is for. Pearsall's face went from ruddy to something patchier. This is out of order. She's a teacher, she's not. She's not, Adrian said, standing, and the case came open, and the copies came out. 1 set for the chair, 1 for each board member, sliding down the horseshoe like cards dealt in a game already won. I'm her counsel, Adrian Colston, and every claim she just made is documented in the packet now, in front of you. The fabricated finding, the shell company, the option, the consulting fee paid to your treasurer from an entity connected to the option holder. She let that sit half a second. I'd advise the board not to vote on item 7 tonight. I'd advise the board to refer item 7 to the county's own inspector general. And I'd advise Mr. Pearsall to call his own lawyer before he says another word. Nobody seconded the motion. The chair looked at the pages, and at Pearsall, and at the 2 women standing in the light, and she said, in the flat, careful voice of a person who has just felt the floor move under a colleague, item 7 is tabled pending review. That was all, 4 words, but Camille felt them go through the room and out into the hallway and down 11 days of runway, and she felt the 11 names in her drawer turn from a list of the lost into something else. Deborah found her hand in the crowd afterward and held it hard and said nothing, which from Deborah was everything. What Camille did not see, because it happened 3 miles away in an office with a shipping company's logo etched in frosted glass, was the other half of the answer landing. Jihuan had the same night circled on a different calendar. He had known who Ash was for weeks, in the way he knew most things, sideways and early. He had the name before the envelope reached Camille's wiper. He was the one who put it there. And he had spent those weeks doing the only thing he had ever been good at, which was understanding a thing all the way to its floor before he decided it. Ash wanted a photograph. Ji-hwan in a county hallway with his hand on a bureaucrat's collar. Ji-hwan making a call that ended a career. Ji-hwan being what the old organization had raised him to be, in daylight, over a woman, so that the men who filed such photographs could take the legitimate house he had spent 20 years building and burn it for the insurance. The easy answer was the one his blood knew, Do-yoon standing in a doorway. A quiet word to Sang-hoon-yoon in an empty parking structure. The kind of conversation that ended problems and started nothing, because nobody who had it ever talked. He did not have that conversation. He sat with Do-yoon in the frosted glass office at the hour the board was meeting, and he moved money instead. He called the men who held Ash's paper, the real paper, the loans that propped up the Riska de Guise suits, and the oxblood shoes, and the property fund that was 90% leverage and 10% nerve. He did not threaten a single one of them. He simply stopped being the wall between Ash and the people Ash owed. He let a rumor of the fabricated county finding reach exactly the auditors who could not unhear it. He handed a competitor a legitimate opening on a legitimate deal. He removed his own hand from under a man who had built his whole weight on borrowing against a fall that was never going to come. By the time the board tabled Item 7, Sang-hoon-yoon's empire was a building with the load-bearing wall already sold out from under it. It would take months to come down. It would come down in courtrooms and refinancing calls, not alleys, no photograph, no hallway, nothing to file. He wanted you loud, Do-yoon said, watching the last transfer clear. I know. So you went quiet. Ji-hwan closed the laptop. Loud was the only thing he was selling. I didn't buy it. He asked for no credit. He told no one what he had done. He did not send Camille a second envelope, explaining that the woman in the second row and the man in the frosted glass office had, on the same night, from opposite ends of a city, taken the same enemy apart with paper. He let her have the win as hers. Because it was hers, because he had finally understood the thing she had told him in a dark parking lot, that his word was good but narrow, that he kept every promise except the one that would cost him. The one that would cost him was this one: to win without being seen winning. To save the thing and take nothing for the saving. He kept it. The program passed at the next board meeting on a clean voice vote. Item 4, no discussion. The way things pass when the people who used to block them are calling their own lawyers. $60 a month in materials, 2 afternoons a week, 11 children off a list in a drawer and back onto a roster. Deborah read the result and took off the beaded glasses and pressed them to her mouth for a second before she got the gavel down. Camille went home and sat at her own kitchen table, where a woman had once said, "We'll see," to a 9-year-old, and she let herself cry exactly once, for the girl who had waited 18 years to hear a board say yes. Then she gave Marcus P. his book back the next morning, the snowy day, and watched him hug it to his chest and run to show Deshawn, and she used the last frame on a $19 disposable camera she'd been carrying since October to catch the two of them laughing over it in the classroom light. The photo came out crooked. She kept it anyway. 4 months later, a bus broke down. Not the same bus. This one belonged to the new after-school program, ferrying 11 newly enrolled children back from the County Science Center on the narrow 2-lane road with the blind curve and the rock wall and no shoulder, and it coughed and hissed and rolled to a stop at almost the same bend, because some roads keep their appointments. And this time, when the black convoy came around the curve and stopped 30 feet back, it was Camille who crossed the distance. She walked the whole way in the royal blue blazer with the cold October air on her face, past the steaming hood, past the children she had already turned into a thermodynamics lesson out of pure habit, straight to the sedan with the dark glass. The window came down before she reached it. "You still miss meetings for school teachers?" she said. Cha Ji-hwan looked at her the way he had looked at her the first time, like a man who had expected furniture and found a window. He was in the midnight blue suit, no tie, collar open, the koi climbing the left side of his throat, where it had always been. "Only for one," he said. She put her hands in her pockets. "I have conditions." "I know you do." No half-truths. Not the mean lie. Not the soft one. When you can't tell me something, you say you can't tell me. You don't let me fill the space with a better man. "I remember the terms," he said. "I've kept worse. And no fixing my program. It lives or dies on its own. It's living now. I did that. You don't get to have done it." "I never wanted a program that was mine," he said. "I wanted to watch you keep yours." She almost smiled. She held it back, because there was one more thing, and it was the thing that mattered. "You took him apart," she said. "Ash. You could have used the other thing. The men, the doorway, the quiet word. You didn't." "No. Why?" Ji-hwan opened the door and stood, unhurried, out on the broken road where it had all started. 30 feet of asphalt between a dying bus and a line of children who were already drifting toward him because they remembered his hands. "Because you told me my word was good and narrow," he said. "That I never made the promise that would cost me, so I made it. I built you something you can stand inside, where I don't hold the only key, a foundation, real money, real board, and your name on the power, not mine. I already signed the part I can't undo." He paused. "That's the promise that cost me. Control. And I gave it away and kept nothing back." Camille's throat worked. Behind her, a child yelled that the steam smelled like the ocean, and someone laughed. "And there's a last thing," Ji-hwan said, "that I've been carrying since the first time this bus broke down on this exact curve." He didn't kneel with any drama. He simply reached into the breast pocket, past the white handkerchief, and held out a small ring, plain, the way plain is a decision. "You were the first thing that ever made me want to stand still. 20 years moving, and you turned a dead engine on a bad road into the one place I didn't want to leave." The wind moved the frontal curls across her face. She let it. "You know," she said, "the last man who gave me things kept a ledger." "I know. This one starts at 0 and stays at 0. That was always the deal." She looked at the ring, and at the koi on his throat, and at the 11 children now openly abandoning the bus to gather around the strange still man they'd decided long ago was theirs, and at the science center 40 minutes down a road the district had tried to close. "Ask me the whole question," she said. "Don't make me fill the space." The half-smile arrived and this time stayed. "Marry me, Camille Devereaux, on the road where you wouldn't be grateful to me." She took the ring. She held it in her open palm a beat longer than he could stand, just to watch him wait. "Fix the coolant hose on the new bus first," she said. "All the clamps. I'll pay my half." Then she said yes. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Tell me, K-Fam, have you ever poured your own money and your whole heart into children the system decided weren't worth saving? Have you ever loved someone who hid a piece of who they were and had to choose between the omission and the man? And when real power finally stood on your side, could you demand it be used with dignity instead of force? Mark my words, K-Fam. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and redemption, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.